Welcome, folks. Hope everyone's doing okay today. Um, as the title says, I'm here for Microsoft. I'm Mitch Patel. I'm a global account technology strategist. Yes, that sounds very boring. But my role basically is I kind of act as the business liaison between my customers and Microsoft. I act as their Microsoft CTO. So I try to understand from their business side what they're trying to do today, what they're trying to achieve, help them solve their challenges and problems. And how I kind of do that is understand what they've owned today by the Microsoft solution stack, what they're using, what they're not using, and try to figure out how to get them the max value out of that. At the same time, try to understand where else they might achieve success in other solutions we may have, right? So my day basically, I'm just talking to people all day long, walking around the house with my McDonald's headset on, right? Just taking orders and going through that. So it's a fun job. I love doing it. Been in IT for over 20 years. So I've been on the other side of the table most of my career, being the system admin, being the person that's doing the security, troubleshooting, on call, all of that. So I can definitely understand that side of the house. And now I'm on the other side trying to help customers achieve and make things easier for them. So welcome. Totally appreciate the turnout today, and I hope we can have a great time today. So some humor first off, right? So we are talking about security. So, one of the biggest threats out there are phishing emails, right? And so kind of figure out, since it's, may the fourth be with you. Figure some Star Wars humor will be in play here. So please do not open unverified emails. My dad does all the time. It's very frustrating. He actually sent them to me. He goes, open this? I'm like, no, delete it. So, yeah. Alrighty. So why we're here today, talking about Microsoft security. Many folks will hear me say, yeah, Microsoft is a security shop. And I hear a bunch of laughter and go, haha, that's very funny. Actually, no, it's true. We are the largest cybersecurity organization in the world. And I'm going to talk through in terms of why we make that claim and what we're doing to kind of help make the entire world safer. At Microsoft, our goal is to make the entire environment, world safer from a security perspective. And I'm going to go into how we're doing that today, right? But we've broken it down into what we call protect, simplify, catch, and grow. Protect everything, simplify how we do it, catch what others miss. And I'm going to go into some features of that later around Copilot. You guys may have heard about that new feature on AI. I'm going to touch on it. It's fresh off the press, so I have some material I can share around that. And then grow your future as we grow and learn as well, right? So we all know that, sorry, this is a build slide. I was forgetting about this one. So why Microsoft is considered a cybersecurity organization, right? We are defending the largest clouds out there, right? We do consider ourselves a multi-cloud organization. We want to help you protect Azure, GCP, AWS. We don't care where data is. We want to help you protect it, right? That's what we'll always come in and help you with. 1.4 billion endpoints. If you think about this for a second, everyone in the world probably uses Office at home, at the office. You probably have kids or yourself play Xbox, right? All of those endpoints are considered areas where we can get telemetry from. So if you think about the entire world, about the users of Office alone, and try to think about all that telemetry coming in, that's how many signals we're seeing, right? So somebody really smart at Microsoft about maybe 10 years ago was, why don't we use that information? People are clicking on links on their personal email. People are getting attachments. People have viruses on their endpoints. Let's figure all that out, package it up, and build a security solution. That's where we are graphing the entire internet. We are seeing all of that across the entire ecosystem, right? So now we're leveraging that detail to help organizations and consumers be safer as they go about their day. So some numbers here that, are a little bit hard to kind of grasp, right? But we actively are at any time targeting or investigating 140 plus threat groups out there. We have taken down so many botnets and other malware in the world that you may have not even known about, right? We go out there, we detect something, a threat from Russia, a threat from North Korea, a threat from China, anybody else we see, we will go out there and purchase that domain, purchase that computer and take it down. Not because of the fact that we want to make money out of it or profit from it. It's a threat to everyone in this world. So we're constantly monitoring that to figure out what's going on out there. 40 plus nation states. But where I really want to focus is the 65 trillion signals we get daily. When I mentioned earlier about Office, Xbox, all of those endpoints, 65 trillion signals coming in daily that we are consuming, combing through, and then from that, building all of our security solutions on, right? I would challenge anyone here today in terms of any other security organization that is able to consume that many signals. And that grows every month. Last year, that number was 43 trillion. So it's growing year over year over year as we get more and more consumers of our solution. We are investing in the next 5 years, $20 billion in cybersecurity tools. The last 5 years, $5 billion. We have the budget that we focused on to build these solutions. How that money is being used is to help us acquire other security firms and build internal technology, right? We have 8,500 plus security engineers and researchers that work 24/7, 365 to look at the threats out there and understand how to beat those. If you own any Microsoft licensing that contains the security solutions, those 8,500 researchers are also working for you. The tool set that you're using, Defender for Endpoint, Defender for Office, Azure Active Directory, Identity Protection, the solutions behind the scenes are coming from folks that are doing that research. So if an organization out there gets popped, bad for them, but they've given us more detailed intel of how to beat that threat. And guess what? You benefit from that, right? So we're learning and we're giving at the same time. Any questions on this? I know I get a few questions sometimes on these numbers. So how do we do this? End-to-end protection, right? We have to look at all of the endpoints here. Endpoints, email, identity, data, cloud, and apps. We take all of that and we've built a solution that covers all of these, but also adds a compliance to it. The auditors always come at you, right? Whenever you're in IT security, the auditors want to come in and make sure, are you protecting the data correctly? Is it classified correctly? Where is it going? Who has access to it? So we've been learning, getting feedback from our customers, and we are building that into the platform. It's built in there as well. And as I mentioned earlier, multi-cloud, multi-platform. Yes, we cover Mac OS. Yes, I have employees that I work with that have a Mac machine at work. We're not just surfaces, right? We want to make sure we protect every device out there because that's the real world out there. We have Linux and Azure, right? So we need to make sure we protect those platforms. So this is at a view of everything that we kind of look at from a research perspective. When I mentioned the 8,500 earlier, these are the areas that they focus on. It's constantly growing, right? Now imagine you as an organization having to have a team do all of this. It's almost impossible. It can be doable, but it's very expensive. So we're doing this behind the scenes so that we can make our products better for you guys, right? So when it comes down to how we do all of this, right? So I mentioned Defender, right, against threats and SIM and XDR. You guys have probably heard of Sentinel. Sentinel is our SIM source solution. It's our XDR piece that helps us defend across the entire stack, right? Multi-cloud, I mentioned earlier before. Secure identities and access. You guys have heard of zero trust. Zero trust is a huge, huge piece of IT security. The funny thing is it came out in 2007, right? So it's not something new. It's been around for a while. Very difficult to implement because a lot of moving pieces. But we want to make it easy for you because we're building our solutions to meet the zero trust need. Protect and govern sensitive data. I mentioned earlier compliance, right? One of the biggest pieces of security is data, right? When you go to an organization, there's two important pieces. People, right? We want to protect our people and give them the tools to make sure that they're protected. We also want to protect the data, right? Because that's your IP. There could be contracts, confidential data, sensitive information, all of that. You want to protect that as well, right? So all of that kind of combines together to be able to give that holistic security piece. And then obviously you want to be able to mitigate and combat threats, right? So we're able to detect all that, be able to see what's going on. It is very difficult to stay ahead of the hackers out there, right? I'll give you a story. A couple of years ago, we were trying to figure out this specific threat coming from China. We could not figure out where it's coming from. And we did some research on it. We finally found it. They had a classroom, like a school, and every room had about 30 to 40 desks of kids that were just hacking away, right? And there was rooms and rooms and rooms of them, right? These kids range from like 6 years old to about 20 and so on, right? So you take 30 kids times 10, that's 300 kids hacking one organization. And all they were trying to do was trying to find an open IP address. Everyone's trying to click one, click one, click one, click one. One kid goes, raises his hand, found one. Now you have 300 kids attacking one IP, right? Very difficult to stay ahead of that threat. So what we learned from that is how do we proactively detect something like that? And if we can detect it, how can we quickly stop it from spreading? There's always going to be patient zero, right? We've all seen the Ebola movies. We've all seen all the disease movies out there. There's always patient zero, that one animal that got infected first. That's always going to happen. But how do we prevent patient 1, 2, 3, 4, 100,000, 10,000? That's where we're putting our efforts into. Let us learn what's going on. Let's understand the human behavior. The next click. If I can help protect that, it's a safer world out there. Because at work, you guys have solutions, but at home, are you safe, right? You have grandma that's clicking on cat videos all day. God knows what's coming out of the cat videos, right? We want to protect against that, right? So we have to protect all of our people around that, right? So that's what we're trying to do as an organization, right? And don't believe me on this, right? I know there are folks out there that say, hey, you know, that's Microsoft. You're trying to toot your own horn. Nope. Get it. In the last couple of years, we are now in the we're in top 6 Gartner reports as being the leaders across all of these specific solutions. Endpoint, unified endpoint management, the SIM, Sentinel has made a fantastic move in that place. Information archiving, CASB, right? I don't know if you guys are from where the CASB is, but Netscopes, all of those out there as well, right? We have that. And access management has been the bread and butter, right? Active Directory, Azure Active Directory. We've also been recognized by Forrester Wave as well. And these are continuing to coming out. And the CISOs and CIOs I talk to love these because these talk about the solutions and how we're going, but they talk about the ROI. How to do more with less, how to get savings from having an integrated solution versus having multiple different third-party solutions coming together, right? All right, so let's talk about the solution, right? I've talked about Microsoft and why we are a cybersecurity organization. Have I convinced you that we have some pretty good depth in this space? Yes, no? Okay, cool. There are doubters all the time, and I don't care, right? I'm just here to kind of help educate, bring awareness, right? So at a very high level, this is our portfolio of solutions, right? And I will apologize right now. Our marketing department has no clue how to name products, right? It is the most confusing thing in the world. Even folks at Microsoft get confused when new products come out. They rename them. It's like going out and buying a product and saying, new look, same product, new features. Well, I don't know how to decipher this, right? Same problem here. Defender, which everyone goes, wait a minute, is that Defender antivirus? Yes and no. Right? There's Defender for identity, there's Defender for Office, there's Defender for endpoint, Defender for server. Confused yet, right? But think of Defender as just being exactly what its name is. It's there to defend against a specific solution, right? Sentinel is our SIEM and SOAR solution, so very similar to a Splunk or a QRadar. Microsoft Entra. Hey, what is that? Entra is a new solution. That's part of Azure Active Directory. Now we've added identity governance. We've added workload identities. When it comes to identity, everyone knows a user, a computer object, a printer object, a server. But we also need to protect against IoT. Maybe it's a service account. Maybe it's a bot out there. Anything that's non-human that has to authenticate and consume data is what we consider a workload identity. We want to be able to protect that as well and figure out where it's going, right? Intune is our MDM and management solution. I'm sure I spoke to a few folks today who have been doing Intune, so that's been there for some time, making advancements there. Microsoft Priva is a new piece. This is compliance, right? This comes down to the fact of just making sure from a regulation perspective, you have the tools necessary to be able to be compliant. I support customers in the financial services sector, right? So they're hugely regulated. And so we have to make sure that everything they do is covered and protected. That's where Priva comes in. Microsoft Purview, that's probably something new you never heard of before, but you may have heard of information protection or DOP, any of that. Now all that's in that family, right? So we have endpoint, we have identity, we have email, we have data protection, all in there. So what does this look like? And I love this slide because it's busy and super confusing, but it shows you everything around what we do. Right? I'm going to let it build out because the things I want you to understand from this view is that we are looking to protect everything even outside Microsoft. You see GCP in there, AWS. You see IaaS, PaaS, on-premises. This is how things kind of stack for us, right? We start on top. We look at how to protect the data. We look at the identity, right? I mean, in terms of who's accessing the data, where they're accessing it from. We have all of the endpoints here, wherever they may be. I don't care if it's in AWS. I want to protect it for you. If it's a database that's running in GCP, that's fine. I can protect it for you. Even IoT devices. We have a lot of customers out there, like grocery store chains, other folks in the manufacturing side that have just IoT devices out there that could be compromised. I have customers that have HVAC systems compromised. Yeah, someone logged into the HVAC system and hacked the entire organization. It can happen, right? We have to protect those as well. And then your Sentinel solutions down here, I kind of talked, right? In terms of everything there. Any questions on this? I want to make sure I'm not going too fast. Oh, good. Okay. So I was asked to kind of cover the Defender suite as well, right? Talked about what it all is. But let me kind of explain how I mentioned earlier about the 65 trillion signals that are coming in and how we actually make that work, right? One of the benefits of going with the Microsoft security solution is the integration. Prior to this, there was the bolt-on scenario, right? You have Office, you have Active Directory, you have the cloud, you want to bolt on a security solution. Well, that worked great. You had a separate team that focused on that solution. You have to write custom code, APIs, something else to integrate that solution with everything else. There was a patch that came out. Guess what? You have to go fix that solution and the other solution. Then you add 30 more solutions that do something else, right? It became difficult to manage, right? The integration point became difficult to manage. Having expertise to make those things work wasn't easy, right? We started noticing that trend and we started doing, you know what, let's go from bolt-on to baked in, right? So everything's kind of baked in here. So let's start from the left. Defender for Office 365. Phishing emails are still one of the top ways organizations are getting popped today. And where it usually starts is with the C-level suite. Surprise, surprise, right? The people that come to you and go, I don't need MFA. I don't need security. I want to use my iPad on a golf course or at the beach. No one emails me. I'm not important. Actually, you're the most important person. You know why? Because whenever they send out their financial reports, has all the details, and on the last few pages, guess what? CEO, CIO, email address. Half your identity is gone. My G.I. Joe fans out there, right? There's a problem right there. So email is the biggest culprit. But if I'm able to scan your email, because of the fact of I'm seeing what's going on Hotmail, Outlook on the consumer side, I'm seeing telemetry coming in at the enterprise level as well. If somebody gets a malicious email with a bad URL, if you have Office 365, there's a link that we've never seen before, and they click on it, it'll actually get opened up in the cloud and get detonated there to see what happens. If it's safe, we're like, you know what, good to go. You can open it, have fun. It's a cat video, you know. But if it's not, right, if it's something bad, we can then replace that URL, deliver the email to the user and saying this URL has been replaced because we found it being bad. If it's the first time we've seen it, then we will take that information, feed it back into telemetry, send it to every other organization in the world. And then when that email gets delivered, before it's even delivered to the inbox, we'll remove the email. So I'm sorry, the URL. Let's say they clicked on it and it looked like an actual safe email. Now the person's popped. Now something on the machine started doing something funny. It opened up the calculator app, and it's not really the calculator, it's something else. Defender for Endpoint will see it. Defender for Endpoint will get the signals from Office saying, my bad, I thought I caught it, but it looked like it was safe. But since you caught it, it'll send back information back to Office 365 saying, this email is bad. This URL is bad. Go tell your people to go fix this, right? The endpoint got that detail, is now protecting the endpoint. It can then do a search and see who else in the organization also got that email or URL and protect the other endpoints. So now it's consistently going through and checking everything. It can even, and now the identity side of the house, it'll check. So Bob got the email from my grandma with the cat video. Bob clicked on it, Bob's infected. Now I'm gonna look at Bob and see what else Bob's been doing. Oh, look, Bob's been scouring the Tor browser with things and doing things that he should not be doing. I can look at his history and look at all of that aspects of it and then determine, you know what, maybe Bob's account's been compromised. We can search the dark web, look for his credentials. Find his credentials and go, yep, they've been sold, they've been popped. I'm going to automatically force Bob to do a password change. I'm going to automatically force Bob to do MFA every single time he logs in. And in fact, I'm going to block his machine until I can go check on it and do a complete clean scan on it. And that can extend to the mobile device as well with Intune, right? Identity protection at the very top. This is our UEBA solution, for those that know what that is, right? User Entity Behavioral Analytics. It understands every location you're logged in from, every device you've used. It builds a historical graph on that. If anything deviates from that, guess what? It's going to go, I don't know, this looks kind of fishy. It can then do a step-up authentication saying for this specific login, we're going to block it, or we're going to require additional information. Yes, you MFA'd Bob once, I'm going to MFA again. I don't know if it's really you, Bob. Those things can happen automatically. And that feeds back into all the other solutions. You kind of get the drift here, right? All of these are connected. And it's all connected because they're all built together. There's no custom API to build. In fact, you turn on one of these and you say, hey, are you using Office yet? Slider, done. Simple, right? And more of these things are being added as we learn, right? As I mentioned earlier, we take feedback from our customers. We're always looking and researching what's going on there. Anything new, anything that's popped up, it gets automatically added to these solutions, right? Now the bottom half, right? We talked about Sentinel, right? Sentinel is kind of that glue that keeps everything all together, protect everything from all of these solutions, as well as third-party solutions you may have you want to bring in, right? And add additional color and entertainment to what your end users are doing. Insider risk is a huge issue as well, right? Most of the threats we see around data exfiltration, insider risk. Somebody inside either doing something bad and not knowing they are, or someone doing something bad knowing what they're doing, right? So we have tools baked in to be able to detect those as well, right? If somebody starts downloading terabytes of data, all of a sudden, we can see that and go, that seems kind of odd. Maybe he's leaving the organization, stealing stuff, right? So those things can be detected as well and allow you to take action based on that.
The recent that is in the news.
Can you repeat the question, sorry?
So the Air Force leak that happened recently on the Discord, that was recently in the news, would you have been able to block it if?
The Discord one, I'm not familiar with that one.
There was a data leak
There
on
was a data
Discord,
leak by
maybe last week.
Discord, yeah, last
Okay.
week.
So
You were aware of.
we could have potentially helped detect that. What happens most of the time is that sometimes things aren't configured correctly inside the organization, right? So when things of those kind of happen, Microsoft will actually come in. If they're a customer of ours, we can come in and actually do an entire investigation and figure out what was wrong, right? Now, if they had taken all the steps and done everything correctly in terms of configuration pieces, all of that, they had the right policies in place, sure, it could have been stopped, right? But data leakage is a very interesting one because sometimes it's not because of the fact of a malware coming in. It could be because someone's doing something or has a went around the system, right? So we would have to go in and understand what happened, and then from there we can build solutions around it to help them figure that out, right? Hopefully that kind of answers the question.
They had to have been an actual customer of Microsoft for them
Yeah.
to take it in the air.
Yeah, and I don't know if,
Presenting the scenario to understand whether
Yeah.
if they had your solution would have been blocked. Because look
So-
like the person downloaded something before leaving and then just put it on the internet.
yeah, so if they had a solution in place and they had everything in there, depending on the threat, if it was a malware coming in, a phishing attack, if it was something where someone sent them attachments and they downloaded it, if there was an actual algorithm that we knew about, we could have stopped that, right? If it was something new, if everything was in place, it would have probably popped that one user. We would have seen the data being leaked out and we would have stopped it right there,
Okay.
right? There could have been some bleed, but we could have covered it pretty quickly in terms of what's going on there. And then that would then help us understand the new threat, what's going on from there, educate again and see how to fix it, right? So, it all kind of depends in terms of how it's all configured. Now, what I see a lot of times is we'll go in there and consult someone. They'll do everything correctly, but there's one admin that go in there and ease the controls a little bit for themselves. and then bad things happen, right? Like the Capital One breach, right? There was with AWS issue, things were configured correctly. That one admin eased some of the controls. We can't prevent that from happening. Well, we have new solutions coming out that can do what's called cloud security posture management. We can look at drift. So if there's a policy change that should not be done, we have tools coming out to be able to detect that and saying, hey, this was configured this way, it's changed, is this correct? Right, so now we're coming up with things like that as well.
One more question, John. Recently, there was the evil Jinx malware going on where it was just a phishing attack. You click on the URL, your whole user token was compromised.
Yeah.
Having a defender in Office 365 as well on-prem would that have blocked it? Because a lot of security vendors were unable to detect those kind of emails because it was a legit email. It was just a URL, but the user was just going in and that captured that whole session with the cookie.
Yeah, and so if that email was being delivered through Exchange Online, not on-prem, we could have potentially seen that and seen what's going on there, right? If it's the problem with is that a lot of organizations still have an on-prem Exchange environment. And what's causing there is that emails get delivered through there and then gets passed back out to Exchange Online. Some of the headers we can't see there, and that causes some of the issues there. But the email itself specifically, if there were details in there that we've seen before, that could have been potentially blocked. Now, once again, there's going to be a patient zero, right?
Yeah.
We can't prevent that from happening. All we can do from there is learning from that and then take that information and then stop the bleed, right? And then come back and then figure out what happened and fix it, right? So I know we're at time, but let me skip ahead real fast. I want to cover some things so you guys just kind of don't want to leave this out. So Copilot, so Microsoft Security Copilot, something new coming out with AI. Everything I talked about in terms of Defender, all that stuff, we are now integrating ways to automate many of those steps with Copilot. Taking AI, applying that logic to Defender Suite, being able to allow you to miss what others have seen, right? So if there was a configuration piece that's not configured correctly, you can write code within Copilot to say, hey, go check on these things periodically, learn what's going on.
Is there going to be another license?
That, Bobby, you know the answer to that question. I don't know yet. This was released last month. So even I don't even know how to approach that question yet, but knowing the history of things. So I will tell you this. This is requiring a lot of compute for us to generate. In terms of what I've heard, in terms of how we're building this stuff, all of our investments outside of security, 20 billion, everything else is going towards this. So I can just imagine there's a lot of dollars being thrown at this internally. So I could imagine there's going to be some license tied to it, right? Because of the fact of it's very difficult to run some of the CPUs on some of these AI models, right? Specifically. So, but the thing here is that we want to be able to help you guys do more with less. At the same time, we're building ethics around it as well, controls, because there's a fear around AI, right? Like, you know, we don't want the Terminator showing up at our door one day, right? And going, what's going on? So Skynet happening.
So you mentioned getting all of this data from the endpoint, right? So is this why we're expected to practically have powerful processors nowadays? And because of all this data gathering that's happening on the product?
So surprisingly, Defender is an agentless system. It's built into the OS of Windows 11. Mac OS, there's a small agent on there. From what I've seen from my customers, there's not much of a CPU blip on it in terms of that. So there are some requirements around TPM chips and those things of nature, right? Beyond that, there's not a need to have like developer laptops for everybody, right? It's meant to work on consumer grade up to all this stuff. So. Oh yeah, sorry.
No, it's okay. So I know that there's been a lot going on with AI, especially with Google employing ChatGPT, all of that. So what they've found, and I'm wondering if there's a way for you guys to mitigate this, is that, of course, human nature, people are gonna go in, put in whatever they think is funny,
Yep.
and muck with the AI generation.
Sure.
Would that affect, and do you have things in place to stop that process from happening with your AI security?
So that is something that we're actually working on. So right now it's in private preview. This has not been released to general availability because of that exact question. We are testing out internally to go through all those scenarios to say, what would happen if somebody did this? What would it do? So we're doing a very closed environment to learn from it. So what Microsoft usually does is we'll develop the technology. We'll have a few customers volunteer and say, hey, do you guys want to be part of our private preview? We'll put them into a specific isolated tenant, test it out, have them give us feedback, learn from it, build it again, continue until we get to a point where we're like, you know what, we feel safe, this is good. Then it goes into public preview. Then it goes into GA, right? So we're going through all of those steps right now because we're also very concerned around how AI is being leveraged. That's one of the reasons why we wanted to invest into ChatGPT, into AI. That's why we're investing a ton of money into it. I heard a story recently that we're actually buying every NVIDIA chip that's coming off the belt right now because we can't keep up with the demand to be able to build some of these things, right? So this is a no joke investment we're making. Microsoft is actually part of the ethical AI group as well. So, we are also ensuring other firms are doing things the right way, right? So, but yeah, that's a very important question. That's the biggest question I get from customers is that concern is what if somebody uses public information, puts it into this engine, and then all of a sudden have a huge data leak, right? I can't prevent the human from doing it, but how can I prevent the AI from saying, don't do this? And we're putting controls around that on that stuff. Yeah. Any other questions, guys? I know we're over time, but thank you so much for your time. I hope all that was valuable. Any feedback from me, let me know. Please find me. Any questions you have, I'll be downstairs as well. So thank you.